Today's video is Explain the Origin of Anime's Weirdest Cliché by Van Derivi, if I pronounce that right. Let's check it out.
What's the deal with anime characters who keep their eyes closed? It's probably one of the
That's a good question. Always wondered that. Like, why are the characters' eyes closed? Always wondered that. Like, why is that a recurring trope, like one of the popular tropes in anime?
weirdest cliches in all of anime. Can they even see? Well, the answer, believe it or not, is yes, because this cliche is actually 100% rooted in real life. But how? Where does this cliche come from? And why is it so important that without it, we probably wouldn't have anime today? To answer these questions, we first have to go back to the beginning of anime as we know it, the 1960s, when anime for television was invented. There are many reasons.
Oh, and another thing, the glasses. When the character wears glasses and it has the swirl in their glasses, that's another thing. And then when they take the glasses off, it's you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's why the cliche of closed eye characters, known in Japan as itome characters, exists, and we need to understand all of them to solve
I never knew they had a name for that. Never knew. I learned something new today.
this mystery. The first reason lies in the fact that anime, especially early television anime, was cheap. I mean really cheap. And it had to be. If you look up what the first anime in history was, you'll find that it was supposedly Astro Boy in 1963 by Osamu Tezuka, the so-called god of manga, and arguably the most important anime and manga creator in history. But calling Astro Boy the first anime is only half true. Honestly, it's kind of a lie. The actual first anime in history was Namakura Gatana, the Dull Sword, from 1917. There's actually debate over whether it's truly the first, because there's a 3-second animation called Katsudo Shashin that may have come before it, but that's a whole other can of worms. The important point is this: Japanese animation existed almost half a century before Astro Boy aired. So why do we say Astro Boy was the first anime? Easy. Before Astro Boy, Japanese animation looked very different. Not very anime at all, if you ask me. This came as a result of Japan's animation industry being very small at the time. The top dog in Asian animation wasn't Japan, but China, so Japan was essentially copying what its older brother was doing. But after China's Cultural Revolution, where the country basically collapsed and its animation industry went down with it, Japan tried to fill the void. They desperately wanted to be the new leader in Asian animation, and boy did they try, and boy did they fail, at least financially. They lost a lot of money. So when Astro Boy came along, there wasn't much interest in funding new animation projects, or at least there was no interest in funding theatrical releases. But at the time, there was this relatively new technology called TV. Not everyone had one yet, but it was a quickly growing market that needed new content to fill broadcasting hours. Tezuka thought maybe there could be something there, and he was right. A TV channel was interested in funding an animation project, and Astro Boy would be seen by everyone in Japan. Great, right? But there was a problem. The TV channel only offered $800 to Tezuka for making the show. Why so little?
Okay, good question. Did Tezuka make Kimba the White Lion? So I like Kimba the White Lion. That's one of my favorite classic animes. I'll tell a story. Let me know if you guys ever watched Kimba the White Lion. Let me know this really did happen, or I'm just making this up, and this is a fragment of my imagination. I remember being in the first grade watching Kimba the White Lion class because the teacher played it on for us in class. And was there an episode where Kimba ate an animal? I think he ate a gazelle, and the next day they're looking for their friend, and he denied that he ate them. I swear, let me know if I'm correct or wrong, because it's been years since I watched Kim and the White Lion, and I could have sworn that really did happen, or if that was something for Robot Chicken. I can't remember, but I swear there was an episode where Kimba did eat an animal and denied it. So, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to invest in Astro Boy. $800 was simply what it would cost them to buy the broadcasting rights for an American cartoon like the Flintstones from Hanna-Barbera, so it didn't make sense for them to invest much more in a project that wasn't guaranteed to succeed. What did Tezuka do? He took the $800 the TV channel offered him and funded the rest with money from his very successful manga series. He also kind of underpaid some of his staff, but let's not focus too much on that. Tezuka's plan was to offset the money he was losing by licensing the character character for toys and other merchandise. And it kind of worked. In very little time, the market was flooded with dozens of licensed Astro Boy products. Well, it worked if your name was Osamu Tezuka. You see, today there's even a term called the Tezuka curse, which basically describes the negative impact Osamu Tezuka left on the
Okay, so you did make Kim of the White Lion. Okay, just making sure. I swear, I feel like Kim did eat somebody. Let me know if he did or not, because I swear he did.
industry. Don't get me wrong, he did a lot of great things, but also a lot of questionable ones. Today, we've normalized, with some exceptions, the idea of getting a new episode of our favorite manga or anime every week. This has led to decades of a brutal work environment, where creators, animators, and countless others are constantly pushed to work insane hours under poor conditions, often for very little pay. And anime is produced with relatively small budgets. And the truth is that the vast majority of the money the industry generates doesn't come from the anime itself, but from merchandise. That is the Tezuka curse. But why did Tezuka, the so-called god of manga and father of anime, accept or...
Yeah, it's a tough industry. I'm not gonna lie, it's a tough industry for the animators to make money. It's a very tough industry. I wish the animators could get paid well than what they are now. I really wish they could, because without them, we wouldn't have the shows and series we watch now today. So it's good to treat your animators correctly.
create this business model? Well, the guy had an unhealthy relationship with his work. He practically lived in his studio and only occasionally went home for short periods to see his family. Literally, his last words, spoken to a nurse in the hospital, were, "I'm begging you, let me work." But don't get me wrong, Tezuka was aware that making a new 20-plus minute anime every week wasn't possible with the animation techniques and technologies of the era. His original idea was that they'd have 2 or 3 months to make an episode, air it, then have another 2 or 3 months before delivering the next episode. But obviously, this wasn't what the TV station wanted, so it was either make an episode every week with the scraps of money they gave him, or not TV make anime at all. And, for all the criticism you can level at the man, if he wanted to do something, and his heart was in it, he was going to find a way to make it happen. And he did, for better or for worse. At that time, the animation standard was what's known as full animation, which basically means making an animation with many drawings to create fluid movement, what you see in Disney movies. But as you can imagine, more drawings means more time, more materials, more salaries, and more money. So instead of doing that, Astro Boy would be made with limited animation, where only the most important and necessary poses would be drawn. This might...
So like what Hanna-Barbera did. Because if you watch old Hanna-Barbera shows, they're like limited animation. So basically, kind of the same as Hanna-Barbera.
not give the sensation of movement, but it would give the idea of movement. And they'd try to hide this with techniques like moving the camera from side to side, applying zooms, or repeating animation loops. A lot of people at the time didn't like this. They said Tezuka had committed a sin, and that what he was doing wasn't animation, but essentially a PowerPoint presentation. But thanks to these techniques, anime as we know it today was able to be born. All those techniques I just mentioned, and others that Tezuka and his team created, or in some cases adopted from American TV animation, are still used today, and are the foundation that allows anime to exist, again, for better or worse. Something important to point out here is that when there isn't much animation, the characters can't show a lot of emotion through movement. Because of that, the character design has to do most of the work. It has to show what
Now that I think about Astro Boy,
the character is like, how they act, and what mood they're in. This is one reason why anime has so many obvious cliches. The more a character looks like a certain type of cliche, the easier it is for the viewer to understand them right away, and the less work the animation team has to do. For this next part, I have to go back to Hanna-Barbera and the Flintstones. Did you know why Hanna-Barbera designs look so simple? They're very rectangular, and the backgrounds are very simple. Well, that's not because they were lazy, it's to save money, and due to the limitations of the era. You have to think about the fact that televisions back then were very small, and usually came attached to huge furniture, which made them difficult to move. You couldn't count on the viewer being very close, because the idea was for it to be watched in a group or with family, so everyone had to be far away to let everyone see what was happening on screen. And as if that weren't enough, everything was in black and white. HD didn't exist back then, so the quality wasn't exactly good, and the little quality there was couldn't be relied upon. If the viewer was too far from the antenna broadcasting the signal, was in an area full of mountains or trees, or the weather wasn't great that day, the image would lose even more quality. So you had to design your characters around these limitations, hence the Hanna-Barbera designs. They're big, relatively expressive, and easy to distinguish and see due to their simple designs with exaggerated features. And by the way, most of this also applies to the manga industry, which is where most of the stories that later become anime come from. It's not exactly the same, but things like tight deadlines, limited technology, and the fact that manga was made in black and white, etc., still had a big impact on how the industry developed. So if, for example, you had a fat character who was so fat that body fat covered their eyes, or someone who was very sleepy and could barely see, or was very relaxed, it's very possible you choose to draw them with closed eyes, represented by two lines to give the clearest idea of what the character was about or what he was doing. And in the process, you could save some money since you wouldn't have to animate the eyes. If you know anything about character design, you know that sometimes the eyes are the hardest thing to draw because they can make
Yeah, eyes could be hard to draw, but I think hands are more hard to draw. I think hands are the most hard to draw. I mean, okay, well, depending on the eyes. I mean, if you're going for a more realistic look, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're hard to draw if you go for a more realistic look. But if you're just drawing like anime or cartoon ish style, is it's not from my experience, it's not that bad. I mean, I like drawing the eyes more than anything. I mean, so I have, you know, understanding how to draw eyes, so it's not that bad. But hands, yeah, hands are like hard.
or break the illusion. I mean, just take Luffy from One Piece and move the eyes a little bit and the character gets ruined. Now, as you may have noticed, the fat guy, or the sleepy one, isn't the kind of character we usually think of when we talk about a closed eye character. Normally, they tend to be very smart, cunning, often with double intentions and an air of uncertainty where you don't know what they'll do next. You know, kind of a trickster character, not that different from someone like Loki in many cases. This is very different from how this cliche was used in the 60s. So when did the change happen? Now, before I answer that, I want to share a small theory of mine. If you look at works from the 1960s and 1970s by artists like Leiji Matsumoto and other influential creators of that era, you'll notice something interesting. Many of their characters have very small eyes, sometimes drawn as nothing more than tiny dots. My theory is that at the beginning, both the closed eye design and the dot eye design were used to express the same idea, a character with small eyes. Later in the video, I'll explain why I have this theory, but for now, I'll ask you to trust me on this one. As the industry evolved and cliches started mixing together, the closed eye version became the dominant one. I haven't been able to confirm who started the closed eye cliche first. A lot of old manga is simply lost to time, never scanned, never translated. So for now, it remains a mystery, but keep that dot eye connection in mind, because it becomes relevant as we piece this together. Well, to understand that change and finally answer this question, we need to understand 3 key points. The first is Japanese beauty standards. Don't ask me why. To be honest, I don't know. But the Japanese and several Asian countries consider double eyelid eyes to be extremely attractive. One example of this in anime is in Skip and Loafer, where the main character Mitsumi, who is treated as an average girl in the show, has single eyelid eyes that most Japanese women usually have, while the character Yuzuki, who is supposed to be this extremely gorgeous girl in the show, has double eyelids. So as a result of this beauty standard, you can go to older anime and manga and find female characters that have those closed eyes, or at least
Yeah, females do have this eye, this eye shape. But me personally, I mean, monolids are, I think monolids are cute. You know, I don't think you should like change your face to with plastic surgery to get double eyelids. I think love yourself. But I think yeah, monolids are cute.
almost closed eyes, to represent the idea that they have double eyelids. But still, that's not quite the cliche, right? There's no danger in those characters like in the case of Jin from Bleach or Ling Yao from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. You know, there's not that scene where you see them open their eyes to let you know things got serious. Which leads me to my next point. When you're dealing with limited animation or a black and white manga, you have to use any trick you have up your sleeve to make the biggest impact on the viewer. And having a character who never opens their eyes suddenly do so creates a lot of impact in a very easy to understand way. For example, I really like Saint Seiya, Big Shock, and I know most of
I love Saint Seiya. I haven't seen that in so long. You know they have a live action Saint Seiya movie. I've seen it like 2 years ago, a year ago. The live action one. I feel like they should make a sequel to that. You know, I'm not that much a big fan of live action anime movies, but I think it was decent. I think it was decent, and yeah, I remember this being on Toonami back in the day. I remember watching this on Toonami.
If you have never heard of it, because it never caught on in English-speaking countries the way it did in basically the rest of the world. But in Senseiya,
I mean, it was on Toonami. I mean, it probably wasn't the most popular show on Toonami, but I remember watching it.
there's this character called Shaka, who is literally said to be the closest one to God and has this whole Buddhist theme. Shortly before his fight with the main characters, we're told they must not let him open his eyes or they'll die. I can't explain to you how much this marked 5-year-old me, and not just me, but the entire fandom. To this day, Shaka is always in the top 3 most popular characters of a franchise that, I should note, is not small by any means. And I think this whole cliche of the powerful character who has their eyes closed actually comes from Buddhism. I mean, Buddha is typically depicted with his eyes closed. And Buddha is an important pillar of Chinese culture, and as such, it had a big influence on martial arts movies where you can see the cliche of the master with closed eyes, probably implying that they're so wise and powerful that they don't need to see to feel the energy of things and know where everything and everyone is. And what
Okay, isn't the reason his eyes are closed is because of like meditation? Because every time you see him, it's always like he's like meditating. So I just something to think about.
do you know? The biggest genre in anime, neketsu, battle shonen, like One Piece, Naruto, Demon Slayer, etc., are influenced by these types of stories. Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star, arguably the 2 stories that created the genre, are literally based on martial arts movies. But all this still doesn't explain how the whole trickster thing got started, how this cliche became actually popular, and maybe more interestingly, how these characters actually see. Because as I told you at the beginning, if they existed in real life, they would be able to see, because they're actually based on real life. And not only that, but on something that everyday Japanese people are familiar with. And I bet you yourself are too. You just haven't realized it yet. And now, we are finally at the last point. To explain this, we need a quick geography and topography lesson about Japan. The map on screen shows Japan's mountains. The brown areas are mountains, and the white areas are flatter. If I asked you where most people in Japan live, what would you say? If you answered the white areas, you'd be right. And if I asked you which 2 parts of Japan have the biggest populations, which would you pick? If you chose these 2, congratulations, you get a gold star. Enjoy it. A large part of Japan's population lives in those areas because they're relatively flat and close to the coast. These regions are called Kanto and part of Kansai, and they're important for this reason. In Kanto, where most people live, you'll find Tokyo, Japan's capital, and in Tokyo are the districts of Suginami and Nerima, known as the birthplace of anime. That's where Toei Doga, now Toei Animation, was founded. The studio behind One Piece, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, and many others. Mushi Production, Osamu Tezuka Studio, and the creator of Astro Boy, remember him from earlier in the video, also started there. Later on, other major studios like Madhouse, Sunrise, Bones, and many more were founded in the same area. This means that all these animation studios were very close to each other. Because of that, 2 things happened. First, they often shared the same workers, and second, if one studio made something popular, the others copied it pretty fast. On top
So basically, it was like Burbank, California, so to speak. You know how one side could have Disney, one side could have M&G Studios, Hanna Barbera, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. You know, um, forgot his name. The guy who made The Land of Our Time, his studio, Don Bluth. You know, all these studios, DreamWorks, Pixar. Well, no, Pixar's in Northern California. But you know what I'm talking about. You know, you have all these studios, and from what I know, you know, I used to like follow a bunch of animators on social media. From what I know, is that most animators bounce around studio to studio. It's like a small knit community, small knit group, and everybody knows each other. So it's like if you finish one project, you go to their studio and work on that project, and you go to their studio work on that project. It's like small communities. Like everybody knows everybody in the industry, so it's easy. You can say it's relatively easy to like find work. So it's kind of like that, you know. From what I'm seeing, like the Japanese animation studios are like close knit, small community, where it's easier for the animators to like bounce between projects at different studios.
On top of that, the anime and manga world has always been very driven by trends. In fact, the manga industry is so focused on what's in that there are magazines made for extremely specific niches. It's common to hear stories about editors pushing manga creators to keep up with whatever is popular with new generations. Clothes, video games, and so on. And not too long ago, there was even a strong taboo against making stories set outside Japan. Editors believed that if a manga took place in another country, it would fail simply because it wasn't considered trendy. Anyway, we normally think of the anime industry as this big Japanese industry that represents all of Japan. Now even more so that anime is becoming a big mainstream global phenomenon, with each Demon Slayer movie making the GDP of a small nation. But the anime industry, being this big industry, is something relatively new. With the exception of the biggest shows like Sazai-san or World Masterpiece Theater, for most of its history, this wasn't true. The anime industry, or at least the kind of anime we think about today, you know, shows targeted to otakus, high school settings, fan service, big action scenes, cool robots, dark themes, and so on, mostly developed in just a few major cities. Because the industry was centered in those places, creators shared ideas with each other and released their shows mainly in those same cities, where the small fan base lived. Today, many
It was a good OVA. Hold on. This right here is a good OVA. You guys should check it out. It's really great. You know, just thought about it. What he was saying. I watched this like twice before in the past, so definitely check it out. It's like about the things he was saying, how it was like for otakus, and now it's like became a global phenomenon. Yeah, definitely check out this OVA. It's Otaku no Video. I think it's still on YouTube. Last time I checked, it was on YouTube, so definitely check it out.
people assume that anime was broadcast all over Japan, but that's a misconception. Back then, a lot of shows aired only in specific regions, and some were only available as home releases in certain stores or areas. So in the end, both of the people making anime and the people watching it were concentrated in the same places. And because they were all so close together, cliches.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Otaku no Video was made by Gainax. I think it was made by Gainax. If I'm mistaken, let me know in the comment section below if it was made by Gainax or.
And trends spread quickly and became a regular part of anime. One of these areas is precisely the Kansai area I mentioned a moment ago, which is the final key to solving this whole puzzle about closed eye characters. In the Kansai area is Osaka, and the stereotype of people from Osaka in Japan is that they're more direct, relaxed, social, and funny. This stereotype.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about Osaka people. Is that those are like the qualities they have, and also I've heard like the Kansai accent is more country compared like to the Kanto accent or anywhere else. I've heard like if if you ever watch anime, they always bring up Kansai and make it seem like the character who speaks like a Kansai accent is like a country bumpkin. You know what I mean? But I can't tell the difference because I'm not a native Japanese speaker. So maybe one day once I get more proficient in Japanese, I could like understand the accent more compared to like other accents.
It comes from many places.
Like if I'm not mistaken, I think the Kansai is like the equivalent of the South of the United States. You know what I mean? Like how in the South we have accents, and like how some women have like that Southern Belle accent. Is it kind of like that in Japan? Is that do y'all have like what y'all would consider like a Southern Belle accent? Is that what it like the the Kansai accent is like? Let me know. Because that's the only comparison I can make. It's like it's like y'all's version of like the Southern United States accent.
But it's largely because the comedy scene is thought to be centered in Osaka, as some of the biggest comedians in the country come from or lived in Osaka. Osakan people have a dialect, a special way of speaking that can be considered a relaxed way of talking. That's why many characters in anime who are from Osaka, like Ayumu Kasuga from Azumanga Daioh.
Yes, that's what I was picturing in my mind. When I was picturing her in my mind, that's what I was talking about. Her, a character like her.
Have a southern or Texas accent in English dubs of anime. It's not a one-to-one.
Wow. Is that true though? Is that true? Because like the voice actor, the English dub is like a Southern Texas accent. Is that like how y'all see people from Kansai? Is that like how y'all see them when they talk? Oh, I know. Like, it's interesting. Like, language and culture is very interesting to me. Like, I love learning about languages. I love learning about culture, and I just find like the parallels. Like, oh my gosh, life is good. I don't gonna lie. It's just interesting to me.
Osaka, as some of the biggest comedians in the country come from or lived in Osaka. Osakan people have a dialect, a special way of speaking that can be considered a relaxed way of talking. That's why many characters in anime who are from Osaka, like Ayumu Kasuga,
But yeah, she's the one I was thinking about in my head when I was thinking about like Osaka Kansai accents. She was the one. I think it's just like a gag anime, a gag manga. You guys should check it out. It's really funny.
from Azumanga Daioh have a southern or Texas accent in English dubs of anime. It's not a one-to-one translation, but it gets the idea across. So one way to depict them is with a smile, and this applies to a lot of Asian countries, not only Japan, but, and here I'm generalizing, Japanese people tend to have these narrow eyes, and in many cases also round faces with chubby cheeks. So when many Japanese or Asian people smile, it can appear that they have their eyes closed even when this isn't true, which can be shown in anime or manga by drawing narrow eyes or just a couple of dots for eyes. Both designs give the idea that the eyes are barely visible. That's why I said earlier that these two styles were probably meant to show the same thing. So it's very possible that the cliché of the closed eye character, the calm, easygoing type, partially overlapped with the stereotype of Osaka characters, who are often shown as relaxed and always smiling. That could have helped create the idea of a character who is laid back and keeps their eyes closed. I'm not saying these two clichés literally merged, because plenty of closed eye characters don't speak with the Osaka dialect, and plenty of Osaka characters don't have their eyes closed. So this is more of a theory, but it's hard for me to believe that in an industry that relies so much on clichés, and, as we've seen, where fans and creators are so close together, making it easy for clichés to mix, two stereotypes that are so similar could exist side by side without influencing each other, at least a little. But the story doesn't end here. As the 90s and 2000s came, the kids and teenagers who had grown up seeing this character cliché got old enough to make their own stories. They used the closed eye characters they had seen as kids, characters from the 60s that were limited by money, the Buddhist or martial arts clichés from the 70s and 80s, and the Osaka stereotype that became linked to the cliché. This connection was stronger because many animation studios, fans, and cities were close together. And like teens trying to find their own identity and be different from older generations, they put their own twist on the idea. This gave us characters like Gin from Bleach, Ling Yao from Fullmetal Alchemist, or Soshiro Hoshina from Kaiju number 8, who at first seem kind and easygoing, but have an unsettling aura around them. So in a way, the history of this cliché is also the history.
Okay, he showed Brock, so like,
but have an unsettling aura around them. So in a way,
so what would you classify Brock as? Like, what would you classify him and his family? Because the only but his mama is the only one that doesn't have the closed eyes. Just him, his dad, and all his siblings have closed eyes.
the history of this cliché is also the history of the difficulties and changes the anime and manga industry had to go through to become what it is today.
And that was Explain the Origin of Anime's Weirdest Cliche by Van Gery, if I'm pronouncing that right. Let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about this topic. Let me know what you think about Osaka people, Tokyo people. Just what you think about this cliche, this trope. You know, it's really interesting to learn about. You know, I always wondered about that. Like, there's some things you see in anime, you always like want to figure out why characters look like that and stuff. So I figured it'd be a fun video to react to. But also check out Otaku no Video, the OVA. That's a good OVA. I've seen like twice years ago. Really good OVA. It's really kind of inspiring. You know, I don't know how many people know about that, but hey, it's, you know, something worth checking out. Definitely Definitely check it out. But like this video, share it, comment, subscribe to the channel. We hit 100 subs today, and I want to say thank you all. Thank you for helping me get to 100 subs. 400 more down. 400 more down, guys, until I can open up memberships for you guys. And again, thank you, and God bless. I'll see you in the next one.